If you want to know why for me installing an MDF worktop looks like this, then stick around to find out.
Hi and welcome back to this build series where we are building a table saw and router station in a small workshop. One of my recent videos picked up quite a few new subscribers, and thank you for everyone who decided to subscribe. So if you're new here, this is what you've missed. Trying to make the most out of a small space, I am building a table saw router station cabinet with built-in storage underneath and dust extraction in the back. We're doing this in a few different phases, and you joined us as we are about to mount the top. So I've been out and I bought some MDF, which I'm going to use for the top, and we need to cut out space for the table saws to sit and get this thing looking nice and smart. So let's get into it.
Okay, so I've made the recess slightly oversized for the table saw, but I want the top to be nice and snug, getting up nice and close to the sides of the table saw. So this is the first time of many I'm going to be picking this thing up, putting it in, measuring, and then working out where I need to make my cuts to get this top nice and snug. And for the top, I'm using 2 sheets of 1-inch MDF. Now 2 inches is probably overkill for the top depth, but it's what I'm going to need to get me to the height that I need to be flush with the top of the table saw. And because I didn't plan this out, it turns out that the base of this cabinet is about 20mm wider than a standard sheet of MDF, which is not ideal, but what I'm going to do is use some edging to kind of cover up that gap and make sure that you can't see that I stuffed it up. The more woodworking you do, the more you realise that 99% of it is just covering up your mistakes well. So now that the top's in place, I'm just using those reference measurements from the sides of the cabinet to work out where I need to make the cuts into this MDF. Look at that, I'm even trying to make them square. That's pretty good for me. And yes, I'm using a little bit from the inside of a biro pen because I can't find an actual pen. I've got a slight overhang on the back which I just need to scribe off and then remove because I'm going to be putting some Outfeed support on the back and I want it flush with the back of the cabinet. And this is where my new toy comes into play. This is the first time I'm really getting to use this in anger, but I bought myself a Festool Trek saw. I did a review on it on the channel last week, so if you want to see that, check it out. This thing is nice. I've had so many people comment that they didn't like the way that I use a table saw to cut some big sheets, so now we have improved. Shop safety for the win. And on an unrelated note, I realised halfway through this cut that I was cutting MDF without a face mask on. So as you can see, I improvised for this first cut with my hoodie, but then I stopped what I was doing, went out, got myself some proper protection before turning this garage into a really carcinogenic snow globe. I've got a big head and this thing's really comfy. I will leave a link to it in the description below if you want to check it out. I'll also leave a link to this Festool Trek saw if you want to see the exact model that I got. It's basically the baby one, but it is an absolute game changer. And as you can see from this shot, it does a really good job of pumping all that sawdust straight out the back of the tool where you're supposed to connect dust extraction. But it's very expensive dust extraction, so it's definitely on the list. So if a few more of you watch these videos, then maybe we'll be getting a Festool dust extractor very soon. I'm just laying the track on, running the saw through and then making the cuts to remove that section where the actual table saw is going to sit into the top. Now when I was recording and cutting the plunge cut across the back, I was concentrating very hard and forgot to record it, but as you can see I went most of the way with a plunge cut and I'm just finishing it off with a Japanese pull saw. That way I get really nice crisp corners and it pops out really easily. And it's time to lug this table saw back into place again to check everything's fitting. So on the first test fit, it is a bit of a snug fit, and I forgot to account for these little rubber nuggins on either side. Nuggins, is that a word? Anyway, these rubber things on either side, so I might need to route them out, but we'll see how we go. Now all I'm going to do is just repeat the exact same process on the second slab, which is going to fit on top. So as we see this drop out, then I'm about to confuse myself. So as you can see, I'm lining up to make sure that it all matches, and then I realise that the boards are massively out of whack. Oh god, what's happened? Look at that face, he's so confused. What have I done? Oh yeah, I flipped it over. Anyway, so now we're going to flip it back over and then check that it all lines up the right way. Which it does. Look at that. I wasn't worried. Were you worried? So now we've got the two parts of the slab top in place, we need to worry about these runners for the rack and pinion fence system. So what I'm going to do with the front, is I'm going to set that in front of the top so I don't need to worry about it. But this back one, I'm going to need to either route out or make some space for it to move backwards and forwards within that top. So having had a look at it, what I'm going to do to start off with is I'm actually just going to use a Festool, cut out a notch in the top slab, retest it, see how it looks. Time to lift that table saw again. So after cutting the notch in the top panel, it's still just a little bit too shallow for the rack and pinion fence to move properly. So I'm going to cut through the bottom one as well, and just make a groove all the way through, and that way we should have plenty of space to move backwards and forwards. Call that dust. Thank God for this face mask. So after cutting that out and test fitting, look at that. It's all looking nice and snug. We've got room for our nuggins, I think we called them, and then we've got room for the rack and pinion to move backwards and forwards all the way through the top, which is going to be nice and simple. So as I'm putting this glue on, I was thinking about the comments, because this took me a long time. It's really cold in my garage and the glue did not want to flow. And obviously you're thinking, well, why don't you just screw the top off? Well, it's glued down and I can't get it off. So yeah, just lots and lots of squeeze in, lots and lots of squeeze in. But we got there in the end. My forearms hurt, but we got there in the end. Yes, I could have done with a bit more glue, and yes, I could have spread it out, but I gave the boards a wiggle, so what more do you want from me? So now that part of the top is in place, we need to start thinking about this part, which is where we're going to be putting a router table in the end. So what I've actually got here is 2 sheets of 1-inch MDF and then 18mm ply for the cabinet, and that's a bit much to go through. So what I'm going to do is just cut out a nice big space, so we're not having to cut through so much material, just putting up a reference for where I want this to sit. If I'd have thought ahead, I probably could have just put a couple of stretchers across the top of the cabinet, but I didn't think it through, so we are working out as we go. And while I'm doing this, I obviously want to seal the MDF because it's absolutely useless against moisture. So any suggestions on what to put on the top, then please do let me know, because I'm really interested to see what you guys think. And because I'm not going to be installing the router table today, I'm actually going to leave this section for now, just to give me the flexibility to do what I need to do to get this router table in place. But here it is, it's going to sit here, and as you can see, that's roughly where it's going to go. Now that I've set the table ever so slightly lower than the top of the table saw, just so I've got clearance to move the fence backwards and forwards, but as you can see, it's starting to come into shape. So we cut this big square out for the table saw to sit in, and that's exactly the same size as the table saw. So what we're going to do is use this as the flip out outfeed support on the back of the cabinet. So I've got these hinges off Amazon, which as you can see, they lock in place, and they've got a little thumb lever there to then drop it down, which I think will work really well. Once again, I'll leave a link in the description to these if you want to go check them out. Now I can't install these just yet because I need to think about the edge banding that I want to put around the outside of the tabletop. And once again, this edge banding is to protect the outside of the soft MDF and has nothing to do with the fact that I made the top ever so slightly too small. So to be able to add this banding around the back and still be able to flush mount against the back of the cabinet, I need to be able to remove some of the top and then inset the banding across the back. Time to bust out the fast tool again and add another 3 inches of dust onto the shop floor. Then I'm just going to use a precision carpentry technique to remove this last piece of MDF. This is just like watching New Yankee Workshop. His levels of craftsmanship here are unparalleled. I shouldn't be worried about not having enough glue. Now all I've got to do is cut the banding down to size and then attach it all the way around. Now you could use miter joints here, but I am fast running out of time to get this video out for this week, so we're just going to use butt joints. They still look good. And then I've just got to work out a complex system of clamps to get everything to fit and hold in place while I wait for this glue to dry up. Now I heard of painting yourself into a corner, but have you ever clamped yourself into a corner? Small shop challenges are real, people. I had to head back over the other side, so I thought I'd bring you with me this time. This is the reality of working in a small shop. The envy I get of watching these YouTubers with massive workshops is unparalleled, you know. Climbing over here, trying to not bang my head on the roof. See, with my hair I can't see anything. Before any of you say just open the garage door, it opens outwards and I've got 2 cars parked in the way, so it's just a faff and I was trying to be quick. Doing this in a lunch break the day before I upload the video because I'm trying to keep my weekly upload schedule. But once the clamps are off, we can now start putting the outfeed support on there. So we've already fixed the brackets on, and it's just a case of making sure that it's positioned well and then screwed in. Now obviously we don't want it to be higher than the level of the table, and in an ideal world we want a slight drop. So just putting that piece of plywood in, and as you can see I'm having a slight drop just from the top of the table, so nothing catches as I'm feeding it out. Here's a closer look at those thumb clips underneath. These seem to work really well and seem really solid, and they click in place really easily, as you can see from the front. That's exactly what I wanted. For a small space, this gives me all the outfeed that I'm ever going to need, and it's there when I need it, and I can easily fold it away when I don't, so it's ideal, and I think that I'm going to get a lot of use out of it. So now this build is coming towards the end, everything to do with the table saw is now in place, and we just need to think about installing the router lift, which is what we're going to be doing next week. So if you want to see what I've got, then please do stick around, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week, and hopefully we're getting this thing on the home straight.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Cheers.